All right, so today we're continuing our discussion from last year. Stephen Beer is here. He's a CPA who we work with on a lot of our buildings. And we began a conversation last year on budgeting. On the expense side, this year we're going to talk about on the revenue side. Talk about income streams, hidden income streams, hidden assets, and mainly we're going to focus on reserve funds and the proper use of reserve funds, when you can borrow from a reserve. So why don't we start with Stephen, because he's got a lot to say and he's very interesting.
Thank you. Different buildings have different bylaws of what the board is allowed to do on their own and seek approval or not seek approval. Generally, the co-ops have authority to do, the board can do anything. On the co-ops and the condos, excuse me, there are a number of them where if there's an expenditure that's either capital in nature or over a certain amount, that there will be a need to go to the unit owners. And everybody in the building has their own life that they're leading, and not everybody will always agree the work that needs to be done. And it can get difficult sometimes if the percentage of approval on something like a capital item that needs to get approval, it's hard to get everybody out. It's hard to get the positive votes sometimes. It can be a handful. Communication is so important in these cases, to communicate the issue that's going on, why the capital item needs to be done, how it's going to resolve the situation, potentially having the people who are affected by it say to others why it's so important for them, because sometimes it affects specifically units. That's where sometimes it gets a little trickier. People sort of feel that if it's for just somebody else's unit, they're not as inclined to vote for it. So I wanted to touch upon that. You sometimes need to get approval. Rich and I were talking about one of their buildings where they can't even do more than a 5% increase in the monthly carrying charges without going to the unit owners for approval. And as the condominiums have been absorbing this Fannie Mae requirement of 10%, think back, when it didn't exist, everybody was just collecting enough money to pay their operating expenses. Here, we had a 10% increase in addition to increases that were going on in rising costs. We had to work it over somehow over time. It didn't always happen right away. So a building like this could have had a significant barrier to get to that they would have to go to the unit owners for the approval. Mixed use properties are really very popular now. The sponsors understood that the commercial space had a different value than the residential space. And so they tended to try to hold on to the commercial space or value it differently, and then try to keep its cost down or to be reasonable because the commercial space didn't use certain expenses such as doormen and elevators where the rest of the building did. So on these mixed use properties, you've got some very interesting concepts. And where most condominiums can take an IRS code section that allows there not to be any income tax on a surplus from the common charges collected from the unit owners, a mixed-use building, if the commercial space is large enough, cannot take advantage of that requirement. So we have a number of cases where we have to watch income tax very diligently in that case, that the original intention was good to keep the commercial costs down and to run the building well, but we have to watch it because the unit owners, again, as I started with, they have an expectation and they don't believe that they should have to pay income taxes because they're operating on what's called a not-for-profit basis, but they don't qualify under the code section as a not-for-profit. So it can be an issue with that. Now, some of these entities have a set amount that they set up in the budget as to what they're going to charge to the commercial section, and then all the residential unit owners pay their side of it. We have a budget which is expected amounts. We don't know what the finals are going to be. We do our best guess. The years going by and the actual numbers come in differently. So that what's happened is when we get to the end of the year, we want to try to reconcile what the commercial unit owner should have paid versus what they paid. And there could be a number back or forth. So it's sort of the same type of apportionment issue of we are having them pay, but we may owe them money or they may owe us money at the end of the year. But that's the best way to keep track of these, and why a lot of the plans require is that that we do the true up and we clear out the amounts for the end of the year and we get to exactly what it should be. Those numbers don't always available until after the audit is done, so many times that true up takes place in May or June, and then there's either a special charge or credit to work it out, and it gets resolved. But sometimes there are times where the building ends up being run at a surplus, and you true up with the commercial unit and you got them to exactly what they paid, and the surplus is available to be applied to the next year, to potentially be refunded to the unit owners, and you run into the situation where the commercial unit owner tends to forget that they trued up and they've been taken care of, and they want their share of the surplus, but they're really not entitled to it because it's really only the residential side.